Most able-bodied men were in the army, or wounded or dead. The land was impoverished, the people near breaking point.
An old farmer with a 7-year-old girl, his grandchild, came to see me. The child's father had died in Gallipoli and the mother had died as well. He begged me, for God's sake, take this child and save her from starvation and death. I took the child. Back in Istanbul, I discovered that almost all of my officer friends had taken in poor children like that from the villages of Anatolia.
General Mustafa Kemal, Turkey's future leader, warned that this was a recipe for national disaster.
There are no bonds between the government and the people. What we call the people is now composed of women, disabled men and children. For all alike, the government is the power which insistently drives them to hunger and death. Every new step taken by the government increases the general hatred the people feel for it.
But far from relaxing the pressure on the Turkish people, their war leader, Enver Pasha, had even bigger demands to make on them. While Britain swallowed up the old Ottoman Empire in the south, Enver looked east, dreaming of a new Turkish empire extending into Central Asia.
Our destiny forces us to move from the south to the east, where our blood, our roots, our language, and, most importantly, our future lie.
Ludendorff also had plans which ignored the parlous state of the Turkish army. By May 1918, he had a crazy idea for Enver to strike at the heart of the British Empire.
Even if we are victorious in France, it is still in no way certain that we can force the English to a peace acceptable to us if we are not able to threaten their most sensitive spot, India.
But Enver stuck to his own agenda, and that included sending his newly formed Army of Islam to capture the oil-rich city of Baku. Britain and Germany also had Baku in their sights. Now the scramble for Central Asia was on.
The speed and energy of the Turkish advance seems to have taken Europe by surprise. They hadn't thought Turkey was able to carry out such deeds.
Ludendorff was furious to find yet again an ally trying to steal resources from Germany.
Unless the Turkish advance on Baku is halted at once and the troops are withdrawn to their original positions, I shall have to propose to His Majesty the Kaiser the recall of the German officers in the Turkish High Command.
While they were bickering, Britain sneaked into Baku first. Turkey's commanders, like Vajihi Bey, were growing bitter over the cost of her alliance with Germany.
We thought we were sacrificing ourselves for the common good of the Germans and Turks. Oh, this shining silvered plan. We've sacrificed millions of our sons for a dream.
A woman is asking everyone she sees, "Have you seen my Ahmed?" Which Ahmed? Which of the 100,000 Ahmeds? He went this way, she said. That way? To the Suez Canal? Sarikamish or Baghdad? Was your Ahmed swallowed by ice, sand, or bitten by scorpions? No. None of us have seen your Ahmed. But he has seen hell. If we could only explain to a mother what we gained from it, news to make her proud. But we lost Ahmed in a gamble.
Regardless of the Central Powers' mounting problems, Ludendorff's push on the Western Front was storming ahead.
We're going like hell, on and on, day and night. Our baggage is somewhere in the rear and nobody expects to see it again. We're glad if ration carts and field kitchens can get up to us at night. Now we go forward, past craters and trenches, captured gun positions, ration dumps and clothing depots. Our cars now run on the best English rubber tires. We smoke none but English cigarettes and plaster our boots with lovely English boot polish. All unheard of things which belonged to a fairyland a long time ago.
The British Fifth Army fell back in disorder before the Germans. Von Hutier's 18th Army had advanced the furthest. They encountered slight resistance because the areas they reached were of lesser strategic importance to the Allies. Instead of reining von Hutier in and turning his army against Allied strongholds, Ludendorff rewarded him with medals and reinforcements. Crown Prince Ruprecht, commanding 4 of the German armies, saw big trouble ahead.
German High Command has changed direction. It has made its decisions according to the size of its territorial gain, rather than according to operational goals.
The problem was Ludendorff. He had an eye for detailed battlefield tactics, but was blind to the big strategic picture. His army's spectacular advance had no vital objective. Indeed, woe betide a staff officer who dared ask Ludendorff what the operation was meant to achieve.
I object to the word operation. We will punch a hole into their line. For the rest, we shall see.
Rudolf Binding, at the cutting edge of the Second Army, realized that the speed of the German advance across this open, undefended ground was a problem in itself.
One cannot go on victoriously forever without ammunition or any sort of reinforcements. Behind us lies the wilderness. The thing which annoys and upsets us again and again are the exaggerations of the newspapers and the telegrams to crowned heads about the decisive victory.
The German advance, which looked so good on paper, had dangerously outstripped its supply lines. Some units were so far ahead, no one was quite sure where they were, and the Germans had neither the horses to pull the supply carts, nor enough fodder.
The sun dries out the poor earth to dust. I don't know what we will live off. Already we have no oats. If we have a bad harvest, then we can send the horses to the sausage factory.
The deeper the Germans penetrated Allied lines, the more their own deprivations were forced home to them.
Like a vision from the promised land, we are already in the English rest areas, a land flowing with milk and honey. Our men can hardly be distinguished from English soldiers. Every one wears at least a leather jerkin, a waterproof, either short or long. There's no doubt the army is looting with some zest.
On the 23rd of March, Ludendorff suddenly dreamed up a real objective, the city of Amiens. Amiens was a hub of the Allied railway system, the key junction between northern France and Paris. Amiens' loss would be a calamity for the Allies, as French General Ferdinand Foch realized.
We must fight in front of Amiens. We must fight where we are now. As we have not been able to stop the Germans on the Somme, we must now not retire a single inch.
The German Second Army set out for Amiens, but slowed and halted on the way. Rudolf Binding was sent to investigate.
Today, the advance of our infantry suddenly stopped near Albert. Nobody could understand why. Strange figures who looked like soldiers were making their way back out of town. Men carrying a bottle of wine under their arm and another in their hand. The advance was held up, and there was no means of getting it going again for hours.
The German troops had found French towns full of food and drink, in quantities and qualities they hadn't seen for years.
Whole divisions had entirely gorged themselves on food and liquor and failed to press the vital attack.
The Second Army had lost precious time and momentum. Here, outside Amiens on the 4th of April, a combined Australian and British force stopped the Germans. Ludendorff called off the Michael offensive. His lack of a strategic plan and the failure to supply his troops had squandered a priceless opportunity. His officers were now seriously concerned.
Ludendorff has totally lost his nerve.
How will this war end? England is still unbeaten.
The physical exhaustion of the infantry was so great that finally the men could hardly fire their rifles. They let themselves be slowly wiped out, almost without caring.
Then Germany's greatest hero, Baron von Richthofen, was shot down behind British lines on the 21st of April, shortly after his 80th kill. The Allies buried him with full military honours. A British plane then flew over his headquarters, dropping a photograph of von Richthofen's grave. The Baron's was the most public German death, but he was one of over 230,000 casualties in just 1 month. Germany was running out of men, having failed to capitalize on Russia's withdrawal from the war. Germany had left 1.5 million troops on the Eastern Front, soaking up vital resources, food and transport. Germany's leaders were out of their depth, fighting what Ludendorff would later call a total war, but with the administrative structures and thinking of a small 19th century state. Now Ludendorff's nightmare unfolded. Germany had failed to achieve decisive victory before the Americans poured into France. 250,000 by March 1918. But General Pershing gave the Germans some breathing space by refusing to allow American troops to serve under British or French command.
America declared war independently of the Allies, and she must face it as soon as possible with a powerful army. The morale of our soldiers depends upon fighting under our own flag.
Pershing, obstinate and stupid, hankering after a great self-contained American army. Ridiculous.
What changed the situation was a radical reorganization of the Allied command structure. During the bleakest moments of the Michael offensive, General Ferdinand Foch was appointed Allied Supreme Commander on the Western Front.